Hi, welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be talking about whether or not the financial advisor, banking advisor role actually fits what you are expecting. So I'm going to break it down real simple. What is financial advisor, banking advisor, financial planner? What are the differences between all these roles? So all these roles, uh, their main function is to be in the branches. So all these branches you see out there in the community, they're all called retail branches. Now pay attention to the word retail. So the retail branches, they're essentially there to sell you and market you items, right? So the products are credit cards, mortgages, um, bank accounts, anything that they can give you as basically sign you up for is basically a product, right? So in terms of whether or not the role is for you, I'm going to break it down to workload, sales, hours, pay, and promotions. So I'm going to start by talking about workload. So if you're working at the retail banking sector section, and you're doing client advisor, which is teller, or banking advisor, financial advisor, anything that has to do at the branch level, you're going to be looking at a lot of workload because you'll have a lot of walk-in traffic. So people will be walking in, they park their cars outside, they walk in. It's kind of like a fast food chain store. You're serving clients 24/7 nonstop until your shift is over, basically. So if you're a financial advisor, banking advisor, someone that's in the back office inside the branch, you sit there, you come out when you're not making cold calls, you come out and then you start talking to clients, start to see what their need is and if you can get them hooked up on some kind of product. So let's say they probably need a credit card, maybe they need a US credit card, maybe they need a new bank account, maybe they need a savings account, maybe they need to open some GIC mutual funds for their investments, something like that. So you're always busy, workload. After you finish all of that stuff, you have to deal with a lot of compliance things. Compliance paperworks are very important because what's going to happen is you get the client to sign a piece of paper, they leave, and then you figure out, oh no, there's like 30 more pages that I didn't give to the client to sign. You have to somehow get the client back into the branch to sign the paperwork. And all of this time is not counted towards your sales target and things like that, which is the next part I'm going to cover, the sales. So across the region, all across Canada, um, the sales targets for all the big five banks have increased exponentially. So back in 2013, 2012, 2010, it wasn't always like that. It was more geared towards customers, clients first. So whatever the need was more important is more important than whatever you were trying to sell to them. So if a client comes in and all they wanted to do was withdraw $500 from their bank account, and let's say they had $10,000 sitting in their savings, um, before you could you wouldn't actually tell them anything. Now it would be more of a sales pitch. So you would tell them things like, do you have any plans for the money? Are you looking to invest? Do you want to have, do you want to make more money out of that money? Essentially trying to get them to invest, to buy a product out of you, something like that. So that's kind of like the sales. And the sales targets are pretty high for every single bank. So it's not only TD that I have up on my screen here that's talking always about high sales targets, high everything, and especially it's more geared towards big cities. So if you're in Vancouver, if you're in Calgary, if you're in Alberta, I think is also starting to be like that. I mean, Calgary's there. If you're in Ontario, Ontario and Vancouver is like the huge hell hole, like the huge hole for in terms of high targets and high expectations. So high targets correlates to high sales. So for every single week, financial advisor, banking advisor, whatever advisor you are, you always have your own um, bracket you have to meet. So you'd have to do 250,000 in a week For FAs, 250,000 a month. But it's kind of like a figurative speech, right? Every single bank, every single branch does it differently depending on their book volume, depending on how many people actually walk in, right? So you have a lot of pressure. You have to somehow meet the sales, and sometimes it's not always that easy. So that's something you have to think about when you're also coming into this role. And the hours, talking about the hours, every single branch has a different set of hours. So let's say you're stationed at a TD branch. Most TD branches are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that counts as a 3-shift interval. You essentially have 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., or 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. They have many shifts in there, stuck in there, right? So it's not a normal 9 to 5 desk job, 8 to 4 desk job. You're going to be on the call essentially on a rotating shift every single week, depending on the needs, depending on who's here, who's not, who's essentially going to be gone, who's going to be at a different branch, who's going to be at training. It's all shifted around all the time. It's not set in stone what time you are going to be 100% getting all the time. And you could also be shifted to another branch. So let's say you're at A branch, you're doing, let's say 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. today. Tomorrow you could be at B branch doing, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. But then you might be thinking, how does my sales even count if I'm moved everywhere, right? So here is the horrendous thing. Because they're moved around so much, and the turnover rate, it's a revolving door because everyone does like a year or two and they leave, right? So the turnover rate is so high. The clients, the customers, they don't build a relationship with the bank anymore. So it's not really a relationship banking, and the bank doesn't really care about that. They used to care about that in the past, but now it's more about the hustle, more about the sales than the actual relationship building. Because this advisor that's building the relationship, in the next year he could be gone, or in 2 years he could be gone because the company refuses to give him a promotion. And that's me moving on towards how much pay you're actually getting. So when we're talking about pay, we're talking about contracts. But when we're talking about contracts, we're also talking about full-time. So for certain banks, you'll have contracts, binding contracts that specifically states you have to be in this role for a certain amount of time. So let's say you have to be in an FA role for 2 years, binding, and you cannot move to a different role within the same bank. So listen to that very carefully. If you are in the FA role, you are essentially stuck for 2 years. You have to pay a penalty, a premium, in order to break that contract to move up or move down or move lateral to another position in the same bank. So when you're thinking about that, it's actually not a really good deal. And when you're picking it up for experience, you may be like, oh, 2 years? That's fine. That's nothing. I can do it. But when you go in and you start to churn out those sales, right? It starts to backfire on you and you start to think, how am I going to survive these 2 years doing these things? So when you're looking at these contracts, when you're looking at these big banks, when it comes to that point that that a bank is so scared of their employees leaving to another bank or moving up in their same bank, that's a big warning sign already, because that's a red flag. If they're so afraid of people leaving this position that's open and they have to give you a 2-year binding contract like the military, be prepared. Be prepared. Like, that's all I have to say about the pay. Because for FA, you can Google this. This is all on Glassdoor.ca. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. So if you search up financial advisors for TDs, their average wage is 51 to 55,000. Bonus included is 60,000. That's maximum. Okay, so that's about the same asking price for RBC, CIBC, Scotiabank, BMO, TD, they're all the same, right? They're all around the same level in terms of if you were looking at a financial advisor, banking advisor, or whatever. Okay, so you have to think about it, right? You're essentially selling your soul to a company for 2 years binding, or even 3, right? So it's something to think about, right? You want to sell your soul to a company for 2-3 years for the same amount of pay, and maybe like a $500, $1,000 raise in a year. Like that's not really a big take for me, especially if I'm bringing in most of the stuff, right? Because I'm going out there, I'm hunting for people, right? I'm on the floor. I'm like, hey, do you want a mortgage? Hey, do you want a credit card? Hey, do you want to? Because most of the stuff is built on lending, right? Keyword lending. A lot of the products you're selling is like the biggest products are lending products. First thing they ask you is, how much lending power do you have? If I have $1 million mortgage, are you able to approve it, right? Lending, that's a big word, right? If you don't have the lending power, your sales aren't going to come. Your sales aren't going to come from opening bank accounts, opening savings accounts. That's not the big fish. The big fish are getting mortgages, getting credit cards, getting investments. These are your 3 big fish. But when you think about it, how many people are going to be out there buying $1 million homes every single week, right? Something to think about. And promotions, when we're moving on to promotions, the promotions ties back to the contract. So if you wanted to step into this field and unfortunately you already signed a 2-year binding contract, 3-year binding contract, there is no promotion for you. You're stuck in this role for however long you signed your life away for. But if you so it's essentially even worse than the military, where at least if you signed like a 5-year, 6-year contract, at least you could move up, right, or move somewhere within the military branch. Here you can't even move. So promotions, don't even think about it. Otherwise, if it's a non-binding contract, promotions, you still don't even have to think about it. You'd have to move to another bank, essentially. So if you're at TD, then you want to move to RBC or Scotia or BMO. You want to move around in the big 5, kind of shuffle it around a bit, and you'll be able to move faster that way. So because within the same bank itself, it doesn't look for internal talent. It always looks for external talent. So let's say you had 5 years in the same company, 5 years for RBC, 5 years for TD, and you're still in the same role, and you don't understand why. It's because if you've been there for more than a year or 2, you're stuck there. There's no way for you to move. So there's a reason why they set 1-year or 2-year contracts for these roles, because they want you to be there forever. So after the 2nd year, if you can't move up or move to another role within the bank, you're going to be stuck there for forever. You'll never get a promotion, and that's the end salary. That's the end goal for you. So that's the breakdown of whether or not the financial advisor job is suitable for you. If you want to take a look at all the reviews that all the different financial advisors posted on Glassdoor, it's all public domain. You can look at it, but they always mention stress. Product itself was not so great. Also mentions pushy environment, management emphasis on selling services, which is what I brought up a couple of minutes ago. So feel free to ask any questions in the comments section down below, and I'll be signing off, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.